Howdy folks, it's Meandering Mike in the Man Cave of Madness. It's after midnight, and we are doing an unboxing of The Siege of Port Arthur. This is another game by the Historical Game Company, designer Stephen Kling Jr. Okay, this is printed by Blue Panther. The publisher is the Historical Game Company. I've got my handy dandy Oyster Shucker of Power +2 shrink removal. Let's get this shrink off. There we go. All right, and we can look at the back of the box first. I'm going to zoom in and look at this portion up here. So, 48 thick game pieces. And these are thick. These are the typical Blue Panther. Oh, I'm assuming they're the same. A 4-page rule book. That's very standard for Historical Game Company things. 20 game cards, 10 cards aside. It looks like, as we can see here, it's their standard cards that have a movement, a combat, and a special event each turn. So each turn, each side will draw one card and a control factor of how many units get to move, how many gets to shoot, and whatever special events. It looks like, yep, the standard good old canvas map. 11 by 17 according to this, and 1 6-sided die. We can see the typical style of pieces. Again, it looks like their standard attack, movement, defense. The little number in the circle is a range, so things like artillery have a longer range. It looks like they've got, I'm not sure if that's a battleship or a cruiser or something for some shore bombardment. Here's a cavalry. I guess US, it's probably Cossacks with no range, 1 hex range. So we're getting up into close combat there with these. Not a very strong combat factor, but mobility. All right, so Siege of Port Arthur. This is set in the Russo-Japanese War. So 1904, the war lasted 1904 to 1905. And the Japanese have surrounded and are sieging the city of Port Arthur. And basically, this is the game showing the assault on Port Arthur. So 100,000 men strong, the Japanese. All right. So let's look inside the box. All right, I'm going to zoom back out. And I'll put that, I'll drop that there. Typical Meandering Mike, clumsy style. All right, so we've got the cards, the dice. I'm going to tilt this down a little bit so we can still see the artwork, but we won't see the title at the back there. All right, and these have the little slidey band. I'm going to just go ahead and not try to slide them off, but I will peel it open because I use, yes, plastic bands, not rubber bands, to hold my cards. There we go. And as usual, there's the printer control card there, which has no effect. There should be 10 cards for each side. Russians, Japanese, Russians. All right. As usual, like I mentioned, move, attack, special. We'll quickly look through some of them. So this is a negative, blinding snowstorm, where the Japanese units may only move 1 hex a turn this turn. That kind of bite on the very first turn. So definitely some of these cards in the other games I've played with, there's like, wow, some are bad early on, and so here's like no special. Inadequate intelligence. You're just moving and attacking. Well, Japanese may move 1 additional hex and add +1 to all attacks. That one is awesome. You can only move, you can't move. Now, in most of these cases, you're attacking with less. Move 6, attack with 4. But there may be some that's the other way around. That 6 move, 4 attack, Die 622 Russian readouts. Out of 5 or 6, the Russian is disordered or far disordered limited. Ooh. Mine warfare. Nogi orders an advance. All moving Japanese infantry units may move an additional hex and add +1. Nogi's son is killed. 2 Japanese units. You return to play. Here's a case where you can attack with more than you can move. All artillery may attack twice and add +1. Wow, reinforced. 11 Japanese units and 5 can attack special. All Japanese unit marks with a star enter play. So there's a set of units that don't begin on the map, or I'm not sure if the... Often in these games, the attacking side enters the map at the beginning. So I'm going to assume it's the same, maybe not, but these are a set of reinforcements that they wouldn't get right away. Unless you draw this the very first turn, then everything's coming on. 10-foot high millet. Wow, so a field of millet. They're sneaking through. No Russian defensive fire this turn. So they're sneaking through the millet to get close and attack. Emperor is pleased. All Japanese may be rallied. This is always a great card in these. Normally, you rally at the end of your turn, but with those rally bonus cards, you can do it at the very start of attack. So normally the guys have shot at you and disorganized you, and all your guys that got shot in the other turn aren't going to, until the end of your turn, get undisorganized and rallied. Not with this. Boom, right away. All right, let's take a quick look at the Russian cards. Bold counterattack. All attacking Russian infantry add +1. No Russian infantry in redoubts may move out of them. And if the Novik unit is in play, it cannot engage in combat. So often I think you would normally just stay put in your redoubt, but there might be time when we want to switch forces around, and if the enemy is, has maneuvered in such a way that there's nothing attacking on one flank, you could shift guys over. So covered way movement. 3 Russian units may move an extra 2 spaces and add +1 to all attacks. No defensive fire permitted. All right, so they're shifting around. They've got some kind of protected, covered way. Like Russian units in fort hexes add +1. Fort defense. Magnesium rockets. Russian artillery adds +1 this turn. Novik's support. Novik, was that the name of that ship? Place the Russian Novik unit in Taki Bay. Okay, yeah. If not already in play. It may attack 3 times. So normally there's 10 cards, and there's typically 24 turns on the turn record track for all the games from this game company. Every single one I've seen so far has always had 24 turns. We'll see if this holds true or not. Relief news. Rally. Yep. Nothing special. Oh, only can attack with 1. Wow. Scurvy, dysentery, yuck. What the Tsar expects. 2 Russian infantry units may be returned to play. All right. So there you go. Set those aside along with the die. So there's the 4 pages of rules. I'm going to go add a little more. All right. So, as we mentioned, attack, defense, movement, range, and the circle. The silhouette includes the types, so some rules affect infantry, cavalry, artillery. It is a cruiser. All right. The back of these guys have the defense factor. So when you've been disorganized, you flip over, you can't move, you can't attack. You can still be shot at. And if you get a result against you and you're disorganized, that would disorganize you again, you're dead. There's a chance. Again, assuming this is their standard system. Sequence of play. Draw cards, you move. Defensive fire of the other player, then you can do your combat phase rally. Sorted units, yep. Now, we'll have to see if it's the same in most of their games. You may not shoot ranged attacks during the combat phase if you moved. If you were in place and didn't move, you can shoot range attack. But if you moved, you can only attack if you're adjacent by doing close combat. Well, let's see if that's the same here. Combat procedure. Line of sight. Of course, they don't have things saying ranged attacks as a list. So I'm going to have to hunt through it to see if it's the same as the other ones. Player may move, blah, 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 blah. There's no facing. After when phasing, player may conduct combat for each units of choice up to limit. Wait, what? They may conduct combat for units of his or her choice up to the limit of the number of attacking units permitted by the current card play. The limit is per unit? Okay, well, no. It's the number of units attacking, not the number. Some units get to attack more than once. Those don't count against your card limit. The card is saying how many units can attack. So 5 units can attack. And if one of the units can, for some reason, attack more than once, that counts as 1 unit attacking. This is, the limit is per unit. It's just not written well. I've mentioned this before, that this guy's a lawyer, and he's not very good at writing rules. I mean, I'll tell you, just he needs wargamer editors, and I know more than one people have offered to him to do so, but yeah, he needs some proofreading by some wargamers. All right, so here it is. Buried in here, units which move may also attack the same turn, but only attack an adjacent unit, quote, a close combat attack, and may not attack from a farther range, a ranged attack. Now, there should be a heading here, range attacks, where you talk about range and line of sight. You know, line of sight should be a subcase of a ranged attack, because line of sight is meaninglessly in a close combat attack, but right there, so there should be a heading. All right, intervening units, hills, buildings, fortified lines, fort, to block the line of sight, except in certain circumstances for artillery units. All right, disordered units cannot, if you're disordered, you can attack nor defensive fire. Retreat before combat. Okay, so if a unit with a movement factor is greater than the attacking units, may elect to retreat 2 X's from the attacker and avoid close combat. Provided the hex retreat is empty, not in enemies under control. Okay, so only if they're close combating you. So if they're shooting at you, there's no retreat before combat. But if they're next to you and you are faster than them, not equal, but faster, so obviously cavalry could retreat before combat before anything other than other cavalry of equal or greater speed. Now, I don't think the Japanese have any cavalry units here. If we look, I'm going to get that a little closer for you. Not too dark. Let's see, I've got a little side light here I can get and see if that doesn't could cause some glare. There, that sort of helps. No, get the glare. There's no glare. A lot of artillery. Oh, they do have 1 cav out of 5, but there's that Cossacks out of 6. Oh, they only have 1. So this guy could retreat. The Japanese cavalry could retreat from any infantry. All the infantry looks to be 3 movement. So any cavalry or Cossack could retreat against an infantry trying to close combat them. So technically, if you've moved up next to an artillery on your turn, and you didn't kill him off, and on his turn, if he doesn't move, he could sit and shoot at you. Technically, he'd be quote-unquote close combat, because the close combat is defined as being adjacent, and technically, you could try to retreat before combat. I'm not sure if that's really the intent of the rule, and I could see, because even if you're disengaging and retreating, 2 X's, the artillery still, you're still going to be in range. Whereas if you're retreating 2 hexes away against infantry as a 2 range, you know, he's next to you 1, you retreat 1 hex, you're 2, and the next one, then you're no longer in range. So like you're getting out of range. I don't think you should be able to retreat before combat from an artillery that he started next to you and is shooting at you at point blank range. All right, let's keep going. Combat procedure. Okay, so yep, it is their standard. The attacker is rolling a die and adding their attack factor. The defender, you look at their defense factor and you compare. If it is equal or greater, you've hit them. If it is equal or greater by then just 1, you disorder them. If you exceed their defense with your modified attack strength by 2, you destroy them. Eliminated. All right, now, terrain normally helps the defender. So we'll have things like +2 to the defender for fort, +1 in town, +1 if attacking across the bridge against a defender. A redoubt is +2, while the hill by itself is +1. A fortification line, just the line by itself, is +1 if attacked across the line. River, +1 if attacked across. Now, so yeah, so there's a note here. There's a redoubt, which are partial hex sides. They're facing. So if they're attacking you through the redoubt, you'd get +2 in defense. Otherwise, you'll get the +1 of the hill. Well, let's see, take a quick look at the map. Yes, it's the good old thing. Now, do notice that if you fold these and put pressure, you will potentially create a crease. Don't do that because you can't necessarily easily get the crease out of it. My friend Nanguea, he's experimented trying to do a little ironing, and it sort of works, but not really. And you got to be careful, you know, got to protect it with a cloth and all that stuff. So this is obviously canvas in the back, but this coating is kind of like a vinyl plastic. It's not like they just painted, they've laminated the whole surface of the front thing. So you might actually somehow melt this if you got it too hot. So I don't know, I wouldn't want to experiment with that. So redoubts are all on hills. Forts are the surrounded 360. There's these fort lines, so attacking across it. There's a little, so that's the cruiser. The cruiser can move between the bays. So what was his range on that cruiser? 4. So in the circle, 4. All right, so that's pretty decent. Little shore bombardment. These fort artilleries are all 4 range. That's pretty decent. Oh, wait a minute. What did I see? Didn't I think? Didn't the rulebook show a picture of the guy with the one? What was I looking at? No, that was the back of the box, right? Because this Cossack has a 2 range. Maybe I was just looking at the 1 strength and also thinking, no, look at that. 1. So they changed their mind, or I don't know. Lead time for things like box art versus counters or what? They changed it. So I would obviously go by the counter instead of the art on the back of the box, but that's interesting. Right there too, 1 range for the Japanese cavalry, but on here 2. Oh, they even changed the values. Wow. They must have done some further play testing. 355. It's like, nope, only a 255. So that's interesting. Dear Stephen Kling Jr. Be interesting to hear some of the designer notes or something about that, but I haven't really heard much. All right, so we're in the midst of looking at the rules, looking at the map and the counters sort of all at the same time. These fortress lines, I'm assuming they're defensive value inward. I would assume that if the enemy is on the outside, they would not get a defense bonus from you shooting at them, because you would be inside, like up on walls, shooting it down at them. Fortification lines must stop after moving across. No cavalry may cross except at road. +1 defender if attacked across fortified lines. Yeah, I'm gonna make a, a house ruling right here that across on the interior, if you're on the interior getting attacked, you have a defensive benefit. You know, because, you know, from the picture, well, it looks like that way, but you look at some of these hexes, like this one here. Well, this one has 2 lines here. You know, this is the interior of those, but, you know, one could say, well, there's 2. No, it's you're on the inside, they're on the outside. But does it state that? Probably not. Should it? Yes. I think he's trying to make it light and short, only 4 pages of rules, but as we all know, as experienced wargamers, which I'm sure 95% of everyone who's watching this unboxing knows, that you need to be explicit. You can't assume things, and so sometimes, yeah, you got to say, and it makes it a little longer, but in the long run, you avoid so much hassle by explicitly saying such things as, yeah, you got to be on the interior side of those fort lines towards the old town, towards, and in this case, it's very unambiguous, right? On this map, the outside, a second line here, etc. All right, so back to talking about the combat procedure, where you're rolling a die as an attacker, you're adding your attack strength, you're comparing against the defender's defense strength with any defensive terrain modification. So we were looking at the terrain, and it's all between 1 or 2. You take the best. It's not additive. Well, I'm assuming that because that's his system always. Hopefully it says it like normal, defensive bonuses are not cumulative. So somewhere in the movement, like, yeah, if you're entering this kind of movement and you're crossing and there's a movement effect, you know, you do the worst, but for terrain, you just you take the best one applies. So like in this case, there's buildings, right? And there's these defensive walls. If you're in a building defensive wall, you have +1, not +2. Okay? But let's say they poke their way through here. Here's this defensive wall. They breach it. They get across here. Well, now having this building here means, you still get a +1 defense. Like if there was guys here attacking across here, well, it's still +1. But once you've got to here, if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have the bonus. So any guys now attacking down here would have lost their defensive. They would have no defensive bonus. So, that's a lot of fort score hexes. 1, 7. They're numbered 1 through 7. They got actual names of the redoubts on there. Division Hill Redoubt, 203 Meter Hill Redoubt, Temple Redoubt, Waterworks Redoubt, Taku Shop Redoubt, Siaku, is that, I can't, that one I can't. The font there is not a Ku Shan Redoubt, Chakoatsu Redoubt. All right. And so, as we mentioned, rolling the die, adding the attack strength, comparing against the defense with the defense modifier. If you equal or beat by 1, that number, your adjusted attack versus adjusted defense, if the attacker is less than, you miss. If it's equal or greater, the defensive unit is disorganized. If they are already disorganized, they're dead. Okay? If they're not disorganized and you apply disorganization, normally you retreat. Now let's verify that that is the same in this version. Rally disordered units, if they're not in the zone of control, combined attack, retreats. All right. Disordered and has to retreat 2 hexes away into an empty hex, not in a zone of control. All retreats are made away from the attacker into an empty hex, not in the zone of control. Another enemy unit may retreat through friendly units. If there's no such retreat possible, it's eliminated. All right. And you can advance into combat if it's not an enemy zone of control. So on a flank, depending where you're attacking, one enemy attacking infantry or cavalry that is adjacent to the vacant hex and not in an enemy zone of control. So where they're at right now, if they're not currently adjacent to a unit, they can advance. If you're attacking over here, but you're adjacent to an enemy here, you can't advance if you start in that zone of control. However, if there's an enemy here and then say an enemy behind him, and you attack and you make this guy retreat and he goes over to here, you can advance, now being in a zone of control, but you didn't start in one. So, victory conditions. The Japanese player achieves an automatic victory by controlling. And there's a list of things that they have to do here. 5 readout hexes, at least 3 fort hexes. So how many readouts are there? 1, 2, no, we even way back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are just named things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So they have to control 5 of the 8 redoubts. Okay, so they have to peel this onion and get at least 5 of those. They have to control at least 3 fort hexes. So of the 7 fort hexes, they got to get in a little farther, peel in a little more. And in this last part, there's an or. And we're going to take the appropriate order of precedence because of these numberings. I mean, this this third condition, which is this and this and this, and this has an or. They either have to have 2 X's on Quail Signal Hill. Quail Signal Hill. So they have to get into here. Or Eagle's Nest and the Naval Ridge Hex. All right. Have 2 X's on. All right. So the way you read that is 2 X's on here or 2 X's on here. So 5 of the readouts, 3 of the forts, 2 hill hexes here or here. So obviously it pays to potentially focus on one flank or another coming in. Let's see if we can hold this up a little better. Right? But you still got to get 5 redoubts. So you could clear these 5 redoubts, these 3 forts, and get into here. Or you could do these 5 redoubts and get all the way down here, clean these 3 forts. Now, this side's a little different because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'd still have to get this one. So you'd have to get these 4 and 1 over here. but then you could get any 3 and break into 2. So I don't know though, but the way these multiple supporting readouts here, it sounds like it's gonna be a tougher nut to crack coming in this way. But there's less forts here. There's this gap, right? Whereas here, there's more forts, but a gap in the readouts. So I don't know. That'll be interesting to find out. Replay. All right. So that was the Japanese victory conditions. Insta-win. Automatic victory when they have those conditions met. The Russians can, if at any time prior to the Japanese winning, there are 16 or more Japanese units in the eliminated box. Okay, so if they can bloody down those Japanese and get them to 16, boom, it's over. They'll call off the attack. So at the end of the game, and it doesn't say, but again, yeah, here we are, folks. 24 turns on the turn record track. This is just their standard layout for their map. This little piece on the side's always there. So 24 turns. The Japanese will have lost. If the Japanese did not win, the Russians just hold out for 24 turns or can get 16 dead Japanese in the box. All right. Now, so there are a little bit of historical notes. I like looking here to see what the different, so artillery, Cossacks, Kotak Divisional, East Siberians, Sword Artillery, Heavy Artillery, Naval Reserve. Okay, this one doesn't have as many special, some of these ones, especially the ones in the American Revolutionary War, I really like those titles there on the Western frontier, the attack on Cahokia, Fort Jefferson, Battle of St. Louis, all that good stuff there is the Baton Rouge. Those are really cool. They have a lot of variety of different sides that are participating in the, you got British and American militia and Spanish and some French and various Indians and all that stuff. So there's a lot of different players in there and a lot of interesting historical flavor with this stuff. This is a little more straightforward. You got the Russians, you got the Japanese, you got some pretty standard abbreviations for what's there. Now, there's special rules here. First turn only. Japanese players not limited by the number of units. This is pretty standard in some of their games. Sometimes they've had some rules where they mention a special movement rule and they don't explain the special movement rule, and then you had to find out, oh, well, this other game did that. And again, an editing thing. Better editing, better play testing, it's more proofreading, and especially this model of publishing through Blue Panther's printer, where basically you can update your files and say, here, replace the old file with these files. You could make a correction to the rules, and all games being printed from that moment on could have the new rules. So yeah, I don't know if he's been doing that or not. He should. All right. So any other special here? Cavalry not entering building units unless there's a road through them. May not attack units in forts or redoubts or behind fortified lines. Okay, so those cavalry guys are good for attacking guys in the open, attacking if they can get around behind the redoubt, charging up the hills. If you can breach the walls, or if they can get through, like you can cross the fortification lines if there's a road. So if you've already sort of opened up control and have a gap to get through, but otherwise, they're not as useful. Okay, the Novik, the cruiser, can move in sea hexes from bay to bay for 4 factors. The Russian fort, artillery, Japanese fort cannot be returned to play if eliminated. They are permanently lost. Okay, that's actually pretty important to say. There's some stuff that don't make sense in some of the ones, like Fort Jefferson and stuff like that, where it's like, you should not be able to replace the Ford artillery. Now, units that are eliminated aren't necessarily all killed, but significant enough that they lose heart and flee. Well, if the men have fled, they're leaving behind the artillery guns. In the forts, the readouts, the stockade. I can't remember what the different games, they call them different things, right? So that card that gives you replacements from the dead pile. This is nice that he has said here. No, can't do it with the artillery. Okay, and I think that should hold true probably for all those games. Just like, no, that's you can't really rally guns. Guns have been lost or abandoned or whatever. Crew maybe, but I could say maybe if 2 artillery units had been eliminated, that maybe there's enough guns that you ran away with, and crew, maybe you could give up 2 to get 1 back, maybe. But it's just easier to say no, you can't replace the artillery. All right, so we're at 36. This is longer than I wanted to be. I wanted to keep this under half an hour, but let's take a last look at the background and design notes. No political agenda, no condemnation or glorification. That's good. Historical game. Learn about tactics, problem solving, history. Fun, relatively simple game. Yep. It's not a simulation. It's about having some fun and learning a little bit about the history. And so far I've really enjoyed all the games of his that I've seen, and a couple that I've played. I did a playthrough on the Fort Jefferson one. And I want to do more of that. Japanese landing the Korean post, cut off Port Arthur, which contained part of the Russian fleet. Strong fortifications, small garrison. The Russians assumed it would be relieved in due time. Japanese thought it would be too difficult to take, brought forth a growing stream of men and heavy siege guns. The Japanese losses were horrific, but ultimately they were able to penetrate the defensive lines and occupy the hills above the town, forcing a Russian surrender. All right, so Meandering Mike, Man Cave of Madness. This has been a unboxing of good old, let's zoom back out here, tilt that up, the Siege of Port Arthur. This is the Russo-Japanese War, which went 1904 to 1905. This siege happened in 1904. Well, I don't know if it actually didn't end until 1905, but the war itself went into 1905. It's a 99% the same system for the other historical game. Now, they're not all this system. There are a couple that use a lot of dice. There's like the French and Indian War, and I think they just came out with a new broader picture American Revolutionary War, and I just ordered it, and it's on its way soon. I actually ordered it from Noble Knight Games, since they did have it at a little bit of a discount. And again, as a reminder, I'm going to say, don't forget, folks, don't use rubber bands, use plasti bands. They are protective. They do not damage your cards. They do not get brittle. They do not stain. They do not crunch the corners, etc. So, Meandering Mike, Man Cave of Madness, meandering on and on and on as I often do. So I'm going to call it quits here, folks. I don't know. I definitely wanted to get at least another playthrough of one of these historical game companies in this year. I should be able to do that once I finish my 10 games for the year from the War Room, the 10 game challenge for 2023. But what I think I want to do next year is do a whole series of the American Revolutionary War battle games this way. Do them in chronological order, do all the ones that they have for those battle games. And the attack on Cahokia and the attack at the Battle of St. Louis, those were happening at the same time. They were on opposite sides of the the river, and they were happening at the same time. That would be fun to actually to play those together at the same time and see how those are unfolding. But we will stay tuned. We will so if you like this kind of content, if you want to see those kind of playthroughs, etc., make sure you subscribe to the channel, have your notifications on, all that kind of stuff. I also do almost monthly giveaways, and it's time to do another one. I just did a flash giveaway last week. I'm getting closer and closer to 550 subscribers. So I think this weekend I will start another giveaway that will end once I reach 550 subscribers. So stay tuned for that. If you don't want to miss that, make sure you subscribe and set the notifications on. So to all you good folks out there watching, take care and ciao.